Good morning. Is anyone alive out there? Aha. Aha, aha, aha. Hello. Who's here? Lisa, hello. Simon. Stumbly Jones. Great. A couple of you here. So, I just thought I'd start today by... It's a mini quiz. Plant quiz. I wonder if anyone knows this plant here. And then I'll kind of tell you what I'm doing for the next hour. I'm going to try and make... Aha, back again. Yeah, so I'm going to try and do this for an hour. I've realised that I go on quite a long time. The last one I did was an hour and 3/4, but this time, nope, I try and keep it to an hour. And let's see, does anyone know what that plant is? It was a bit of a... Hi Kate, Mike, any idea? Yeah, having a bit of a connection issue, keeps cutting out, but we'll see. I will persist. Very much alive and loving life. Go on, one person have a guess. One person, go on, please. Just because I tell you why. What this plant is. It's a bit of a trick question. Butterbur. That's not a bad guess in terms of the shape of the leaf. Garlic mustard. That, if someone showed me this, that's probably, without looking too hard, that's what I would have said too. You're in the right family though, because it's in the cabbage family, but it just so happens to be these plants which I'm cultivating because I make a lot of sushi. I make nori sheets with seaweeds, wildcrafted from native seaweeds, local seaweeds. And you know, sometimes I use horseradish instead of wasabi, but I really wanted to be kind of authentic. So this is a wasabi japonica, actual wasabi. Whole lot of plants I planted, and then they got infected with the kind of larval stage of a little beetle that I actually brought in with a load of wild watercress, and they were completely dead last year, and I thought that was it, but actually they've all survived, and I've only lost one plant in one of these pots. Anyway, what I would like to talk about today is specifically, and some of you will know about this, and what I was thinking about when I make these videos is, I know there's lots of people on here that are quite experienced with wild food and working with wild food. So you might know how to do this or have your own method, and that's great actually, because we all have slightly different takes on things. But it's going to be my take on lacto-fermenting wild garlic, and then if there's time within the hour, I'm also going to use wild garlic seasoning to make or augment, is that the word, some cheese, and make some wild garlic butter too. So have a look down here, and there we are. We've got a lovely crop of wild garlic, and I'm just going to say a couple of things about that. Is just to remember, as I've mentioned in other videos, that like wild garlic is one of those wild foods where all parts of the plant are edible. So let's just start from there. That's my sister. I spoke to her last night. She's trying to get my mother to watch, but I can't answer now. I'm going to mention my mother later because she asked a really good question when I spoke to her last night. But anyway, we've got the roots, which are great, slow dried and powdered, really pack a lot of garlicky flavour. We've got the bulbs. At the moment, they're giving a lot of their energy to produce all the leaves, so they're quite small. Typically, like when there's no above ground parts, like that, the bulb on that one there will kind of be about kind of that big, but it's a bit smaller now. Then, yeah, we've got the stem. We could think of as one vegetable in its own right. We've got, well, let's see. We've got the flower buds, I mentioned later, just in passing. Then we've got the flowers. All of these can be eaten raw or cooked, by the way. And then we've got, you can just see it on here. You see that, just by my eye, that kind of 3 bobbled kind of green bit. And that's the immature seed just forming. So when these flowers have just kind of wilted and fallen off, they'd be a lot bigger, but they'd be like succulent and garlicky and bursting with flavour. And then later, they will develop into a kind of black seed inside, which you can use on all sorts of things, or you can sprout. So a couple of things about this is, yeah, I've committed that terrible sin of uprooting a plant. Well, that's okay, because look, it's in my garden, which is where this little cluster is. Yeah. This is great. Look, I've got this kind of magnetic pull over the camera. I'm going to do that again. Amazing. It's kind of like touch hands, like Tai Chi. Ooh. Anyway, here's the little clump. It's been deliberately planted in my house here, actually by some ex-residents, about 5, 6, 7 years ago. So now, actually, a friend of mine, she dug up loads of bulbs recently. She was trying to eradicate wild garlic from her garden, where it was like spreading everywhere. But you know, it's kind of quite a rare situation where you would actually dig up the roots and the bulbs, because you kind of, ideally, from a point of view of allowing the plant to continue to grow, produce new flowers and then onto new seeds, you kind of want to do that. But you know, there would be an occasion, possibly if you're kind of clearing out your garden and you want to kind of keep the wild garlic within kind of reasonable amounts so it doesn't kind of take over. I would personally let it take over. You might dig it up then. But if you do ever think about using wild garlic bulbs after you've taken off the roots and dried them, years ago I got some and I pickled loads of them. They're great. They kind of go green. The only thing about it is, unlike conventional garlic bulbs, they've got they're quite fibrous. They've got these fibres running all the way through, so you can use it wonderfully as like fresh crushed garlic, but like whole roasted, it's just about okay, but it's still kind of fibrous. You kind of pull the cooked flesh off the fibres, and if you've pickled it and you think you can just kind of chuck big ones in a salad, if you love garlic like I do, again, it's like really fibrous. But yeah, still, if you powder like the whole thing with the root, then you've also got a lot of flavour if you do it at a kind of low temperature. But what I was going to talk about today was like how to do like small scale lacto-fermenting of wild garlic, and kind of larger scale, which I kind of tend to do. Like throughout the year, there are days when something's in season, and I just go all out for whatever the particular really good thing is. So right now it's wild garlic, so I really went for it yesterday, and I did my yearly wild garlic harvest. And there's other things like that I do, like wild cherries, rose hips, burdock roots, elderflower, elderberries. It's just like it becomes elderflower day, elderberry day. Yeah, and that's what I do. I just dedicate the whole day to getting that thing. So I've got enough to work with throughout the year, just for myself, but also on kind of courses I run. So I've got lots of tasters and things that I've got that I can cook for people. Now, just have a look at this lovely patch here. I was out yesterday and I made a classic error. So let me just show you about kind of picking some of this. So we got lovely bunches, look, zoom in there, got lovely bunches there. So I could just like snip it off with the knife, or like over here, look, I could just snip this. Look at that lovely bunch, you see that? But look at this, right? I snip this off, and I'm partly doing this deliberately. Look at that. I've got the bunch, but I haven't really at this point. I'm just assuming it's all wild garlic. But let's see. Looks like pretty much like. Oh, can you see the Joker here? Oh dear. Oh dear. Look, we have some lords and ladies like growing in the dark in the garlic, which isn't a good leaf to eat at all. Best thing that can happen is you can eat this leaf, lords and ladies, and the raphids, the microscopic calcium oxalate crystals get in your kind of mucous membrane, so in your lips and your tongue, and it gets this pins and needles kind of burning sensation for a couple of hours. It can't wash away. In more severe cases, your whole kind of lips and tongue can swell. If that happened, like, yeah, I wouldn't be able to talk to you. It's never happened to me, fortunately, but I know people that have been hospitalised. It's happening now just by holding it. That have been hospitalised by that, but no long-lasting serious injuries, fortunately. But that's the point. It's like when you find a cluster like this, it's just check out like the other leaves that might be growing in there. So what can happen, particularly like if you've got a really dense patch of garlic, you'll have like these satellite plants just at the edge. So it might be in a place where there's bluebells, you might get bluebell leaves coming up in there. There might be like lords and ladies growing around. Actually, if we just flip around and look over there, you see there's some lords. So there's some, I lost connection for a second. There's some lords and ladies growing in the crack. So I know it's around here, so I kind of need to be cautious. But when I have got my bunch, what I do is, because I get quite a lot, and we're going to talk about like quantities a bit when we go into my bedroom. We're going into my bedroom. You're coming into my bedroom today. I can't believe it. It's the most practical place at the moment because I live in a house share and there's small children and chaos could descend. We're going to do lots of chopping and mashing and stuff in my bedroom. So there's quite a lot there, but I want to show you what I picked yesterday, some of it anyway. Look, see, I went shopping. It's not an advert, by the way. It's one type of place you can, and look what I got. So I got some wild garlic, and when I pick it, and this really comes down to like just saving time and kind of minimizing like the chaos. You lost connection. Diane, you still there? Your picture is frozen. Keep saying it's paused. Is it paused still? It's been paused. It's been paused. Is it still paused? Are you here now? You still here? Because wave. Yeah, I'm literally gonna end this bit now and go into the house where there should be more or better reception. You're here? The wild's joined. Okay, now great. Okay, so I was just saying I picked this yesterday, but just in terms of practicality, although I've got these bunches like this, rather than just like sling them in a big bag, what I do, yeah, bad last 5 minutes. Sorry about that, Courtney, but the most important thing is the lacto-fermenting. Hopefully it's as good as I hear that your krauting session was the other day. So I've got this, and you see the way I've really carefully like laid them all in here. So all the stems are like facing like one way. So when I pick them out and I go and wash them, which I'm going to do right now, it'd be easier. Oh, one thing while we're here is also when you're picking the wild garlic, just have a look at this one. Look. So often, can you see that? Look at that. often wild garlic grows in quite like shaded places, like dappled shade in the woodland. So that means there's lots of birds in the trees, so like birds can poo. Sometimes big poos, like deep down in the wild garlic. That's just a kind of splatty one. So the thing about making any lacto-fermentation or kind of krauting is like having good quality, clean ingredients. So what I do is when I'm picking bunches, I will avoid, well, first of all, you know, I'll really avoid places where it's all the garlic is just under loads of trees and there's loads of poo on it. I'll kind of walk around, find some cleaner stuff. Or even there, as I'm collecting bunches, I'll pick out leaves that have got poo on them. That's just the first stage of making sure you're getting good quality ingredients, which is so crucial if you want your lacto-ferments to stay really good and not go off, which is what we want ideally. So just going to go and wash them. Let's see if there's any questions. Working fine for me, good. So follow me. I think I lost you again. Are you back? I hope so. Because we're going into the house now where reception is better and it won't keep cutting out. Hi, still there, good. Still with you, brilliant. Just before we go into the house, I'm just going to grab something that I got yesterday. I just mentioned in passing when we're kind of upstairs. Yeah, that's King Alfred's cakes. It's King Alfred's cakes that I picked in the wild garlic wood yesterday. Anyway, let's go and wash these. I'll show you how to wash, not these, the wild garlic. I'll show you how to do it well. Just check out my phone moving powers are still, yeah, still pretty good. So, essential. So just because I know that, you know, the sound of beautiful water falling, just close your eyes and imagine a beautiful woodland scene. The sun shining, water is cascading down from a waterfall, the birds are singing, and you feel deeply, deeply relaxed. This is the first of the first of my pre-preps for doing this, which has gone wrong because I filled this bath earlier and what a water waster I am. It's all drained out. How terrible. This is very bad. Anyway, that was the situation. So now you've had this wonderful opportunity to hear this beautiful waterfall. But I can start cleaning. So it's really hot in here. Look, I do have some hair. There's some hair there. So I've got a look there. I'm going to grab a bunch at a time, and this is the way I like to wash it. I think that's enough water. So I kind of get the bunch and really really give it a proper dunking. So I turn it around, I'm going to dunk it from the other side. Open it up a little bit, more dunking. And flick water all over the camera. Then put it down there. There we go, another one. I'll do 4 or 5 of these. Now what I was doing this morning and last night is I was pre-preparing like every stage of this lacto-ferment, or most stages, so that you don't have to spend like the whole hour together in my bathroom washing garlic. But this is also another opportunity to just kind of look through your leaves and make sure nothing untoward has kind of got in there. Like some lords and ladies, or dog's mercury, or bluebell leaves, or just any kind of bits of dirt. So after I've done this whole bag here, and there's about 10 kilos of wild garlic in this bag, this bath water will be pretty dirty, particularly on the bottom. Be lots of mud actually, lots of muddy bits. Have a look in here now. Look, I don't know if you can see very well, but yeah, well, kind of bits of dried leaves floating around. Oh, have a look at that as well. Look, have a look at that. So this leaf has got some kind of, I don't know, maybe it was a bit of bird poo and then it's like turned into a bit of kind of fungal infection, I don't know. But anyway, it's another opportunity to pick out any leaves which aren't really top quality. One more. Any questions? I'll just do this and then I'll just check if you've got any questions. In a minute. I guess you could always just chuck all the wild garlic in the bath and just get in there yourself. That would be fun. I did that once with some watercress. It's kind of good. Right. Next stage is, it's nice to see the other humans. Ah, on here. How is it that I was? Aha. Right, I'm just going to give a final rinse to this, so come and have a look at that. Outside. Actually, yeah, let's go. So what's kind of important, yeah, you're still there. So what's kind of important when you are lacto-fermenting is that the liquid that you're drawing out from the plants is just from the plants rather than water, wash water or any other water. So this is one thing I like to do, and it's a good exercise actually. There's many aspects of working with wild garlic or wild plants where you get to do some kind of surprising exercise. So one obviously is the picking, where you're doing all this kind of squatting. The other is in the rinsing. So I really love to kind of rinse it like this, and I kind of do it. I won't do it straight at the camera because it will all get wet. But here we go. So basically you're becoming a glorified salad spinner. I guess you could do it this way as well. So the wild garlic workout. So there we are. All this. I'm exhausted. For the last one. Look, you can see that. Can you see that there? There's still probably an alder catkin in there. All this activity, maybe it's all the water that's coming off. It's like rain, because come and have a look down here. There's actually, you see, look, it's actually bringing up the worms. Maybe worms just don't like garlic. Anyway, here we are. Done. The next step. The next step is, you get to come into my bedroom. Welcome to come into my bedroom. I wanted to say that to lots of people for years. I mean, when do you get the opportunity to do that? After you. No, I insist. No, really, that after you. Okay. So, you'll see I've got some garlic here already, but I've cleaned the floor and I've put down a sheet. And what I like to do, so I got that most of the water off with that initial rinse, and then I'm just going to get these bunches and I'm just going to lay them out a little bit like this. just like this. And then I'm going to leave them for, I'll probably leave them for about 12 hours just to let some more of that excess water come off. I mean, it's not absolutely essential, to be honest, but I'm sweating all that exercise. My goodness. You know you're going to come into my bedroom, it's going to be a striptease. I'll try and keep it nice and clean. But yeah, really getting off most of the excess water is important. I mean, I don't want to leave these for so long that they kind of really wilt. It's just to get rid of that excess water. So then, let's have a look at some of the stuff I laid out last night. I rinsed last night. And it's like, I shouldn't have put it there behind the bed, should I? Really? So I can get it again by the bunches. And I'm just going to chop it. And so I'm going to show you how to do this. So I'm going to show you how to do this if you're working small scale or kind of big scale. So here we are, just say you've got one bunch. Now the other thing I'd say, actually, you've just got your bunch, but you might be thinking, wow, like either the wild garlic where I am is not looking like this, this is much bigger. Or you might be thinking, well, you know, I make lacto-fermented wild garlic or kraut, but I like to get it when it's really small. Well, the point is you could make lacto-fermented wild garlic at any stage of growth in the sense of when it's like really young and tender up until when it's kind of fully out in flower, really. I've done it at all different stages, but I like to do it when it's kind of this size and you've got a lot of stalk and the buds are about to kind of open, just because although if we cook this as a vegetable now, it would be a little fibrous, a little stringy when you're eating it. As a lacto-ferment, fermented over kind of weeks, months, even years, that kind of fibrous component will modify, it become much more tender, and of course we're chopping it up. But I also just like it simply because you've got, it's a more complex texture when you're eating it. You've got the kind of more of a bite, even though it's become tenderized in the stem, and then you've got, you know, a different quality of kind of bite when you're using the leaves. But you could, if you wanted, just use the stems, or you could just use the leaves to ferment, depending on the kind of texture you're after. So at this stage, what I could do is just put it in a bowl, a big bowl, with some salt and kind of mix it around. Put a plate on top to kind of push it down and leave it for a few hours for the salt to draw out the natural moisture content. But what I'm going to do is a slight variation on that, which I find works really well if you've got quite a lot of wild garlic, is use a bag and actually, first of all, test that there's no holes in it. Yeah, no holes in that. Very important, because we're going to essentially use this as a big bag. Just going to give that a final chop. Now I'm still looking out for substandard leaves. Look, there's a tip there I don't want. It's all dried out. In there. Do some more. So any questions while I'm chopping? Is salt amount of percentage of weight or more random? We'll talk about that just in a second. it's not quite random. Actually, yeah, as long as the sound of this chopping isn't getting in the way, I'll kind of address that now. So when you're lacto-fermenting, right, what's going on is it's the lactobacillus bacteria on the leaves which are naturally present, which start to ferment the natural sugars in the plant. Now, you might not associate garlic as being something that's got sugar in it, but you know, all plants have their own natural sugars in the leaf. Well, most of them, yeah, I'm sure all of them. And so the lactobacillus will start to ferment that. And it doesn't need salt to be present to do that. So, you know, theoretically, I've never done this, by the way, but you could kind of lacto-ferment with no additional salt whatsoever. Another thing that you could do is, and I used to do this in the early days of my lacto-fermentation, but I stopped, and I'll tell you why, is what you could do is you could get some milk and you could just let it go off over a few days to curdle, and then you could separate the curds and whey through a fine cloth. So the whey, the liquid component, that's full of lactobacillus bacteria. So you could actually just add some of that to the wild garlic mix, either instead of salt or with salt as well. But the reason I stopped doing that is because I run a lot of courses, and increasingly I have vegans on the courses, and if, like me, when you work with so many wild foods and you try your best to keep everything labelled, you know, sometimes, although, you know, I do have things well labelled, such as this jar of lacto-ferment there, sometimes the labels fall off, so I didn't know whether it was vegan or not. And then, so sometimes I wanted to use lacto-fermented wild garlic with a group, but I couldn't because I couldn't guarantee it wasn't vegan. So I kind of stopped doing that. And that works well. But in terms of quantity of salt, if you were just thinking you want to go down the salt route, very roughly, and we'll do this in a minute because you'll see, but very roughly, it's about a tablespoon of good quality salt per kilo of prepared plant that you mix in well. And actually that's why I'm using this bag here, because the mixing it in well is another kind of crucial step really to make sure that the wild garlic ferment won't go off. So I'm just doing one more bunch. Ugh. The reason I'm getting it from the back in that way is that I did that last night, whereas the stuff in the front, which I could easily reach, I rinsed that this morning and it's still a little bit wet. So what was I saying? I don't remember what I was saying now. Zoom in, have a bit of sound. I think working with wild foods is, you know, there's so many occasions for unique sounds. Listen to this. Just enjoy that. I'm trying to think, what are those people that do those kind of weird videos where you it's usually like attractive women in speaking in soft spoken voices that are supposed to give you some kind of tingly thing. And maybe I could just do one on chopping. Maybe I could just do one on chopping wild garlic. Can you feel that, the tingliness? Yes. Now, when you're chopping wild garlic, just think of it as a really sensual sensory experience. Anyway, so there we are. So this is all going to go into there. Do you know, I was planning to do a little, well, just a little silly thing really, just to see if my measurements of weight was accurate, but I forgot to bring up the scales. I was gonna say what I think this weighs and ask you what you think it weighs and then test it on the scales, but because I don't have the scales, I'm just going to say that what I say now is just accurate to within 1 gram, obviously. So there, seriously, I think I have probably got, I reckon I've got a kilo, 1.8 kilos. Yeah, seriously, I do. It's not quite 2 of wild garlic there. So that got some good quality salt, sea salt, and I prefer the stuff that is flaked, to be honest, rather than hard kind of coarse crystals. Sea salt flakes, there we are. So I did something which is very unlike me. Look, just because I thought some people like measurements. Although you're probably already horrified that I'm not using scales if you like measurements, like my mother. She'd be horrified at this. So there we are. 1.8 teaspoons. But you know what? Just because, compared to just like a fine sea salt, which if you put into a tablespoon would be a larger quantity of salt, and this is flaked. To me, just from experience, have a look in there, that just doesn't seem like the right quantity of salt for almost 2 kilos. So I'm going to add some more, actually. So someone asked, is it random? Not really random, but use your judgment. And it's approximately 1 tablespoon of sea salt per kilo of prepared parts. So then what I do is, this is another opportunity for a unique wild food preparation exercise. It's called the human tumble dryer, and it kind of goes like this. This will be a disaster. So I've twisted that up to leave that there. This will be a disaster if it splits. Essentially, it's really mixing in that salt. Should I pour off the brine in my jar? No! No, 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 no. You really want that lovely brine. But that's next stage. Just jumping ahead a little bit there. So ideally, when you're making lacto-ferments, you don't want to add water. You don't want to tip off your precious brine. But you do want to make sure your salt is evenly mixed in. Now, there's no reason I couldn't have chopped this wild garlic much. There's no reason, just in case you couldn't hear me, because all that. There's no reason I couldn't have chopped the wild garlic a little. Next layer, by the way, is striptease. I'm still on a merino wool thermals for winter. Don't know why after doing that. Yeah, you could chop it really fine. You could chop it a little bit bigger. I like this kind of rough kind of chop. Kind of works for me. Particularly, I think if you leave it too big, it's kind of harder for the salt to penetrate and draw out the liquid. So what I'm going to do now, watch this stage, this is an important stage, is I'm now going to get rid of all that air. So as I said, if you're using a smaller quantity, then just mix the salt in a bowl, weigh it down with a plate, leave it for about 3-4 hours to draw out the salt. This is like the equivalent of kind of using a plate and a weight, but it's slightly different, but it has the same effect. So I kind of get out all the air. Like that. Give it a twist. Like that. and to tie it up or just jam the loose bit underneath. Then, so it's also why it's really important that there's no like holes in this, because then the liquid that's drawn out is going to kind of run everywhere. So just as a precaution, you know, I don't think I've ever said this before. You know, if you grow up watching this children's program called Blue Peter, they always say, "Here's one I prepared earlier." So here's one I prepared earlier moments. My first. Here's one I prepared earlier. So I prepared this at 8 o'clock this morning, and I put it in the bowl just in case it was going to leak, but it hasn't leaked. But if it had, as I was saying, you don't want to throw away that precious garlicky brine that you've produced. So what I'm going to do with that is put it in this jar. Have a look in here. Look. Let's see. Maybe it's a bit dark for you to see. There we are. Put it in the jar, and I've got some stainless steel tongs for doing that. And then you'll see all the liquid at the bottom. Now, sometimes I do just stuff this in with my hands, but to be honest, when you're working with these things, so this jar, right, I washed it really well and I sterilised it in the oven. And you might think, well, you know, that's, as long as it's just kind of basically clean, kind of no need to kind of do all that. But actually, any kind of aspect of this where you could have made it a bit cleaner, but you didn't. You could have handled it a bit better, but you didn't. You could have thought about cleaning it a bit better, but you didn't. Like you thought, well, you know, this. And I use this in my own life quite a lot, and it's such a terrible phrase because when I use it, I know that disaster's lurking just around the corner. And that's the phrase, well, shall I wash this a bit more? Nah, it'll be all right. Shall I add a bit more salt? Nah, it'll be all right. Shall I clean the jar? Nah, it looks all right. All those situations when, like 3 months later, when you go to eat your delicious lacto-ferment garlic and you smell it and it's gone off, you think, what did I do wrong? Like, I followed all the instructions, but yeah, what did I do wrong? And if you think about it, basically, you've taken a shortcut with one of those stages. So, there we are. I was searching everywhere in our house share this morning for our rolling pin, which I like to use to stuff this down, but I couldn't find it anywhere. That's one of the glories of living in a house share. It has so many benefits, but sometimes things go missing. And where are they? Who knows? Right, so what I'm going to use is the back of this knife instead. So really like push it down. Even better, actually, I'm going to use this jar. So if you can zoom in on this, can you see that? I don't know, it might be a bit dark, but you'll see it's actually, I really want to push that down. But you'll see there's lots of liquid just kind of coming out there. So I'll continue filling it. Now the other thing I like to do is, like, I might do a big jar like this. I've got some like bigger crocks, or I might do it in something like this. This is very useful. So ceramic pot. So I put it in there. The only reason I'm not using this just at the moment, because this one comes with a kind of ceramic disc that you can put inside to kind of weigh down the leaves, but I couldn't find it. It must be around somewhere. But the other thing, sometimes people put like this in there, and they might put a clean stone in there, or anything that they can use to kind of push the leaves down. You can even get from, I think it's from the States. I kind of looked into it like quite a number of years ago. It's like for lacto-fermenting greens, and essentially it's a jar or kind of container a bit like this, but it has, you think of it, you know, those coffee filters that you kind of plunge. It's a bit like that, but you kind of screw it down. So, you know, as the days go by and the garlic starts to ferment, and this is a crucial point, is that as the garlic starts to ferment, or any lacto-ferment, that the escaping carbon dioxide that's produced will push the leaves up above the liquid. And we'll talk about the above the liquid in a minute, because I haven't actually mentioned that. So with this thing that you screw down, it's like it constantly pushes it down. Yeah, in Japan, I think it was Japan, Lisa. But I ordered one of these online. It's called a salad press. Really? But anyway, I ordered one of these online. It was from Japan or the States, or whatever. And then I kind of got cold feet when the postage was at least as much as the item itself. But, you know, one of these days I will get one. But these methods work well. But what I do tend to avoid is just putting all my year's supply into one huge crock, because if it goes off, then yeah, to a certain extent you can take stuff that's gone off from the top, and the bottom's going to be okay, but eventually it will all go off. And some of my best lacto-ferments, I mean, my most flavoursome, intense one was 9 years old. And if you've got it in one big kind of crock and it starts to go off, you're never going to get to a 9 year period. It's going to go off like within a year. And the other thing about that is that if you use multiple jars, like, you know, smaller jars, then if one in your batch does start to go off, you haven't kind of ruined the whole batch, because you've got it contained. Now, what I'm realizing here is that, look, can you see some of in the bottom of the pan? Can you see? If you can see, no, because every time I tip it up, the wild garlic keeps falling into it. But there's quite a bit of liquid. But what I'm realizing, because I'm doing this live, is actually it would have been far better if I'd left that with the wild garlic for wild garlic in the bag for about four hours to draw out more of the liquid, because there isn't quite enough liquid coming out. But that's okay for now. I mean, it will still start to come out while it's in the jar, but not the best tool. Can you imagine, just in an unconscious moment, I just grab the top of this amazing implement and start, yeah, be like slicing my fingers off, which would be awful. Although, you know, that's how you make new discoveries. You know, blood in your lacto-ferment could be like the next thing, next big thing. But I think probably not. So, more pressing down. Oh, sound effects. Listen to this. Listen to this. Shall I translate what the wild garlic's saying? It's wild garlic language for squeeze me, baby, squeeze me harder. Didn't know that, never heard it say that before. Yeah. So, any questions while I'm doing this? Just going to tip some of that liquid off. Lovely green liquid. So have a look, see if there's any questions. You are the male Nigella. Huh. Funny. Elderberries. Questions. Don't poke yourself in the eye. Yes, thank you. That's good advice. And sometimes I need that advice because I will just like randomly poke myself in the eye. Don't do that. Yep. Is it the same amount of salt if doing with rose hips, elderberry? Rose hips. Well, interesting. I don't know. I've never done rose hips. Elderberries. Do you mean like green elderberries, as in elderberry capers? Yeah, I'm not absolutely sure. I mean, there's great resources for that. If you look at the like the Noma feed or the Nordic Food Lab feed or website, they've got lots of very precise like measurements with working for these things, particularly like wild garlic capers and stuff. But to be honest, a lot of my stuff is just by like pretty kind of guesswork. Now, I'm going to find in a minute. Actually, I might use that. That's quite good. Look, oh look, that works well. It's just slightly bigger. I'm going to get a bigger cup in a minute, and then I'm going to press that down so that I'm also going to get a kilner jar that works. But actually, that doesn't really matter because the point is, right, here's the key things. Now, you want to squash that down, and it's going to take me a bit more effort to scrunch, to chop all that, push all that down. And then what will happen is I'm going to leave this so that there's about an inch of liquid above the plant. We're almost there yet, but it just takes a bit more mashing, a bit more drawing out. As I'm saying, I should have left this for about 4 hours rather than 2 hours. So I'm going to have an inch of liquid above there. And then another really important thing is above that inch of liquid, you want another, at least an inch gap, so that as that starts to ferment and pushes up, it doesn't all bubble out of the jar. Now the jar, by the way, it kind of disconnected for a second there. Is anyone back with me? Yeah, sorry about that. Connection issues. Anyway, so we're coming up for time now. So I'll just show you a couple of nice things. Gone. And back goes, goes. So yeah, you want to create an inch of water above there, then a gap of an inch. It doesn't all bubble over, and you can have the jar like totally sealed. But each day, particularly for about 2 weeks, you want to open it up, and you want to press the leaves down, getting out all the carbon dioxide that's coming out, and make sure you're maintaining that gap, because what that does, it will just allow the leaves to kind of ferment, bring up the acidity, so that mold and and spores and other things that you don't want in there won't have a chance to thrive or to grow. So that's a thing. So the other thing about it, and this is the danger of putting it in a really like massive crock at once, and I did this a couple of years ago. Basically, I lost my whole supply. Is that, yeah, because like after like a couple of weeks when it starts to taste nice, like you're constantly opening the lid, you're taking some out, and like initially you're kind of quite careful and you're cautious and you don't have the lid off for ages. You're just taking a bit out and like eating it. But then you start to get a bit blasé about it and you're leaving it open for quite a long time. You're not pressing it down completely under the liquid. And every time you open that lid, that you're kind of, you know, there's a possibility of stuff getting in there that you don't want. So yeah, although particularly the first couple of weeks, you kind of need to press it down like every day or every couple of days. Kind of avoid opening the jar unnecessarily. You can just leave it with a loose fitting lid on as well, that's not closed. So I'm going to just talk about one final thing, and that is, now where did I put it? Yeah, there we are. So the final thing is this, and yeah, I definitely lost a few people over the last few minutes, because that's unfortunately what happens when you've got slightly dodgy connection, but that's all right. I'll upload this later if I can work that out. So another thing I love to do is take a lacto-ferment like this. So this one's a couple of years old, and I'll put it in a bowl. I'll line the bowl with fine nylon cloth or muslin, and I'll squeeze out all the liquid, and then I'll take the leaf part and I will dehydrate it in the food dehydrator. So the liquid there I won't throw away, because it's a wonderful liquid seasoning that you can mix with other things to just increase the kind of umami kind of flavors, mushroom extracts, you know, a bit of birch sap syrup, all sorts. You can just come up with your own kind of amazing kind of liquid seasonings. But the dried lacto-fermented wild garlic leaf is a really fun thing to kind of work with. And this is a jar of it here, because listen for the sound effects for my highly skilled assistants. What do you think of that?
Intense.
It's intense, eh? Kind of crisp seasoning. So what's nice to do with that, it's packed with flavour, and you could mix it with soft cheese or something like this. But what I like to do is kind of roll it in just kind of roll cheese in it. So we got some lovely, actually I've never done this with mozzarella. This is mozzarella that I actually got from a supermarket skip. Perfectly good, but that's just another alternative form of foraging. There we are. Or we've got some lovely goat's cheese there. So do another one. So there we are. So lacto-ferment wild garlic seasoning used to cover cheese or mix in with like cream cheese. Another thing I was going to do, but where my hour is definitely up, is I was going to get some of the fresh chopped wild garlic, blitz it up in a food processor, blitz it up with some butter, make some lovely wild garlic butter, stick that in the freezer for kind of later on. You could actually do that with the seasoning as well into the butter. Someone asking a question about Alexander's. You can do all sorts with Alexander's, to be honest. Actually, I'm so glad you asked that. Partly because what I realise is when I'm doing these videos, it's very hard to actually, I can see you're asking these wonderful questions and saying hello. And I so appreciate you being here, and I kind of want to kind of look in and acknowledge that you're there, and I want to answer all your questions. But sometimes that's a challenge to do when I'm trying to demonstrate a process. So what I will be doing increasingly is, although I'm doing these live things twice a week at the moment, Monday and Thursday, and I'm doing kind of practical stuff. In a few weeks, what I'm going to do is like one day a week where I'm foraging or I'm kind of making something. Like the other day of the week, I'm going to follow something that I saw a great bushcraft guy, Paul Kirtley, do a lot, where he just has video sessions where he's got a card and he's standing there and he's answering questions, and he says, and someone emailed me this question, and he's got his card and he throws it aside and then he just answers the question, which I really like, because then I can really address things that you're asking without, unfortunately, not seeing them and seeing like I'm ignoring them, which I don't intend to. So, Latifa, hello, you've just joined, so it's hello and goodbye. So yeah, I will see you next time on, what day is it today?
Monday.
It's on Thursday at 10 o'clock. And yeah, I'll look through your questions. Any other kind of questions, just kind of drop me a line and I will answer them. It just seemed kind of chaotic. Was it chaotic today? It seemed a bit chaotic. I'm going to toast you with a drink just before I go. And it's this that I made this morning. And so, yeah, it's a classic thing to do with cleavers, goosegrass. So just infused in the water for a while. Just gives it a nice, refreshing flavour. So a cleaver's cheers to you, and I'll see you on Thursday.